Well, first question has to be, how are you feeling after the defeat at Wembley?
Yeah, obviously it's very deflating, especially when we invested so much energy and time and effort, and the whole week build-up was been great, fantastic, and you put all the emotion into it, and it's obviously very devastating in the manner, obviously that we lost the game. But full credit has to go to Lee, who they fully deserved it. They've been fantastic all year, and full credit to them. They deserved it in the end.
Yeah. Any regrets about what you didn't do on the day?
Um, I mean, I won't possibly say regrets. There's probably a couple of crucial areas in the game where we could have been a little bit better and probably put a little bit more pressure on Lee. But for everyone's effort from 1 to 17, it were fully there. Probably lacked a little bit of smarts at time. Probably didn't control that last period, that last 5 minute period. Obviously, we're the golden point, but you can't fault everyone's effort. Everyone tried really hard, and that's one key focus that we've had this week is make sure we keep that intensity, that effort levels.
The one thing that was missing at Wembley, I felt, was you perhaps didn't play enough rugby that would have cracked open the game.
No, you're probably right. Yeah, I'm going to be quite basically honest with you. We made loads of meters, but we didn't really do much with them meters.
Yeah.
You're probably right there. We've probably had a lot of good key moments, but just not enough. Like you say, as collectively as a whole, we probably didn't put enough pressure on them, and we didn't execute our players as a whole, where we put them under a little bit of pressure. But that's testament to Lee as well, who obviously defended really well. And that's why they ended up deserved winners, because obviously they defended our shape pretty easy and pretty well.
First half was completion rate was, well, you wouldn't want to look back on it, would you really? Slow start. Did that cost you eventually, do you believe?
No, not really, because we've had plenty of games this year where we've had slow starts, but we've built into the game as a whole, as a team. That's what we strive for, really. If we don't particularly get off to a good first set of six, what do you do on your next set of six? So I think as a whole we did okay. His effort levels were fantastic, but like I say, crucial periods in the game where we lacked.
That's third defeat for you at Wembley. Hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, but how did you take it personally? Did you think,
Yeah,
oh
no,
God,
obviously they never get easier. They get harder every time that you obviously lose one. But I'm a really big believer. When I came off the field, I was more optimistic than I probably was previously when I've lost them, because I know this good core group of players that will get there again. And we'll do our fans proud. And I just want to mention as well, with our fans as well, who have been absolutely terrific on the road. And I know they got stuck on the motorway getting down there, but they definitely turned up in numbers and did the club proud.
was it a question of if onlys? If only Lachlan Coote hadn't had to retire, if only Jordan Abdul had been there. Do you allow anything like that to creep into your mind?
Not really, no. I want to. We really reflected on the game, but we're trying to dwell where we've got to start concentrating about the up and coming games, really, because potentially only got 6-8 weeks left of the current season. You can't really. We've got to move on as quickly as possible, and by dwelling on the actual game and on the past is not going to be beneficial for us on the future. And we've had lots of players what have lost Challenge Cups, but then have gone on to be successful in terms of reaching a grand final or actually winning one. So we've got to be focused now on the task in hand, which is against Saints. And like you mentioned, with some of them being better in crucial key areas and probably starting well as well. So doing them little things will put us on a good road and a good path to hopefully getting some bit more success this year.
I know you say that, but sometimes, the hangover is easier to say that you're not going to have than to actually do. So, what have the boys come back into training? It's first day back in training since Wembley. What's the spirit?
Um, well, I'm not going to lie to you. Obviously, it's naturally with such a good, such a good and big final, and the manner in which we lost, there's huge disappointment. But we've got such good leaders in our team that they know how to flick a switch and be able to galvanise a team and be able to switch it so it's more positive. So we looked at the positive outcomes and we took all the positives from it, and where we can also improve from the negative side of things. And you accumulate all in one. You add your leaders and you add your good group of core players. And hopefully then it's a recipe for success, that this week is actually going to be a positive week for us, and hopefully we can hit the ground running against Saints and put up a good performance.
Well, of all the sides to have to go to after a devastating loss at Wembley in a Challenge Cup final, I would have suspected Saints wouldn't have been the one that you would have picked.
Well, I'm going to say yes to that, only to the fact is because Saints have been the best team for the last 4 years, so I'm going to pay due respect and say yes to that. But it's also a good marker for us as well, if we do want to be successful this year, that we've got to play teams like Saints and being able to go over there and do a job on them, because in the past, I think, going on last year, is we didn't really do that, and that's probably where we stood in the table just outside the playoffs, because we didn't go to places such as Wigan, your Saints, your Warringtons, and get a win. Oh, we did at Warrington, your Catalans, and we didn't get the win. So hopefully, if we put in a good performance, you never know. Hopefully, we do get the win.
Yeah. Yes, it's got to be remembered that you are in the six, and there's still an awful lot to play for, isn't there, this season?
Yeah, no, there is. There's obviously, you've got, I think there's about two either side of us where can easily just make the playoffs. So no, it's interesting. Every game now leading into the playoffs is probably going to be a grand final. Basically, we're coming up against teams that are on the cusp of the playoffs like Saints this week. So yeah, every game's going to be competitive. We just got to be able to turn up and put in a performance.
Now, Saints have got a couple of key players missing and out for the season. But it doesn't seem to me that regardless of who they've got missing and who comes in, whether they're stacked with experience or whether they're youngsters, that it has too much effect on their game plan, how they play, their structures. Would I be right in saying that?
No, you're spot on. Last time we played them was at our ground, and I think they had about 9 or 10 missing. What the regular in the first 17. So, and they put in a really good performance then. And it were a tough game. I think we only won by about 2 tries. But yeah, I'm expecting a really close contest this time round. They've got key threats all over the field, and Saints speak for themselves. They've been the champions for the last 4 or 5 years, so it's going to be a real test. And yeah, they've got a few missing. We've got a few missing, so it's going to make for a good game.
Well, they appear to be coming strong, because I don't think it would have been the season that they would have wanted, and certainly the seasons that they've had in the past. But they say best time to come to the party is as a latecomer, and they certainly seem to be doing that, don't they?
Yeah, no, they certainly do. We obviously clipped them on the previous games, and they're showing the Saints of old, basically, with all their effort areas, and because let's be honest, they've been the lead front runners of those sort of effort areas, and they probably had a little bit of hangover, didn't they, from the World Club Challenge, and they did the whole Super League competition really proud there. And yeah, they are missing a few key players, like your Alex Walmsley, who's been arguably the best prop for the last few years, and obviously it's going to be a huge miss for him. But even the front line now with that young, with that George, who's a terrific player, and James Roby, obviously, who speaks for himself. So they've definitely got key threats all over the field, and I'm looking forward to a really good contest.
What sort of contest are you expecting? Are you expecting as a prop, the normal run of the mill? If the middles don't get over their middles, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, pretty much. Arguably, that's how obviously rugby league has been played for the last, how long. So where if your middles aren't working hard, or they have a slight off game, backs, like you say, backs make the scoreline for themselves, don't they? So I'm expecting it to be a fiery contest in the middle. Saints play right to the edge, and I'm looking forward to that.
You've got no Elliot Minchella this week. Now, one player doesn't make a team, but he's so influential for you, isn't he? He's going to be a big miss, isn't he?
Yeah, of course, he's a huge player this year, Elliot, and it's probably one of my, if not, top 3 players of the year for this year for me. It's been really good. It's been consistent. His effort levels are through the roof, and just a really good organiser out there as well. Helps his middles out, move around the park. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to be, a big dent, because he is. We're going to hugely miss him, but we've got players like Dean Adley who can slot in there and really do a job. And Dean's been great as well for us this year. So hopefully, collectively, we do as a middle pack, we do Elliot proud, who misses out for a game.
One final question from me, George, and thank you for your time.
Oh, no.
You said about flicking the switch, and for you to flick that switch and get a win at St. Helens, which don't come every day of the week or every year. How important is it? How important is the game, and how important is it to get back on the horse, as it were?
Massively. It's more making sure we put in a real good performance foremost. I think if we put in a really good performance, hopefully then it'll speak for itself. But yeah, you mentioned about flicking the switch. We've got to. We've no choice. We've got 6 games left. We're on the cusp. We're just being in the playoffs. If we don't flick the switch and put in a performance this week, it's going to get harder and harder. And then next minute, all of a sudden we're probably playing catch up, and we don't want to be doing that. We want to be up the front runners. And speaking again, no one's happy to be 6. We want to be up there, more pushing up towards second and even first. So foremost is that we've got to put in a performance this week.
George, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Hi George, it's Gary, all right?
Hi, how are we doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good.
This weekend and maybe next weekend as well. It's just a time where attitude and mentality counts as much as anything and shows as much as anything.
Yeah, no, it does, 100%. I've lost 2 previous Challenge Cups, and the big ethos then is when you've lost a Challenge Cup is making sure that next game is your best possible performance, and we've gone on and we're putting a good performance. And a few players within our setup as well, like as leaders and stuff, have been in a similar situation to myself, and we spoke about making sure we put in a good performance this week, on the back of obviously a bad defeat, obviously at Wembley.
Have you even dared watch Wembley again yet?
Yeah, we've clicked it up. We've obviously done a review. We've owned up to it as well. You can't just throw it all away. You've got to look at the positives and the negatives, and you can't just put it to one side and hopefully it'll all go away, because it won't. It'll be in the back of your mind. It'll play on you. But the best way you can possibly do that is own up to it and move on.
And just lastly for me, do you feel as though you're playing the St Helens that won the World Club Challenge earlier this year, rather than the St Helens that struggled in Super League after it?
Yeah. I'm expecting to play the St Helens, the best possible St Helens there possibly will be. They've got, like I said, they've got key threats all over the field, and they've got some really good old heads out there as well. What obviously won the World Club Challenge, so it's going to be a huge task. Biggest game of the season. Obviously, barring Wembley, of course, but it's going to be a huge contest, and we need to respond.